Last week, a shooter killed 4 Marines and fatally wounded a sailor after opening fire on 2 unguarded military facilities in Chattanooga. New tales have emerged on the shooter, Mohammed Abdulaziz, including the gunman's disturbing diary. And here to discuss is Ryan Mauro, Clarion Project National Security Analyst. Ryan, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
So let's talk about Mohammed. He's one of those people that a lot of law enforcement agencies are worried about. You know, the self-radicalized lone wolf. We don't know necessarily how or when he was radicalized, but you say that lone wolves aren't really alone. What do you mean by that?
Right, because usually they're at least in contact with someone else. It's not just some guy hanging out in his parents' basement and then they become radicalized and it just happens. Usually they're at least communicating online with someone. Very often they take a trip overseas. Right now, some of this guy's friends are saying that he went to Jordan last year and then came back very different. And then he started buying assault rifles and complaining about U.S. policy in the Middle East, which is really the point where you should go to law enforcement.
Well, someone should go to law enforcement, certainly, but let's talk about that a little bit, because supposedly he went over to Jordan and his parents sent him because they were like, this boy ain't right. Well, this boy is not a good Muslim. He's hanging out with a bunch of turglets. He's smoking weed. He's drinking too much. He's doing
terrible individual,
very un-Muslim things.
Yeah, and so they say, all right, we're going to send him to Jordan. I'm interested to see exactly who is he going to hang out with in Jordan that was going to fix him, you know?
Yeah.
And then he comes back radicalized, which is, I think, much worse than smoking pot. And so it just didn't work at all. But then you look into the background, we hear about the father supposedly being investigated. For potentially having ties to a foreign terrorist group. And that gets to a broader point, which is that they also found that apparently he was writing as far back as 2013 radical stuff. And so just focusing on ISIS doesn't work, because it's like Tinder when you're radicalized in radical Islam, where you just swipe left.
Yeah, the radicalization process happens very quickly. But someone has to seek that out. I mean, they obviously do, and there are plenty of places to find it. I mean, there's no shortage of people of the same age group who are disaffected, but this guy happened to be homicidal and depressed and a horrible person, you know, in addition to all of that. Now, my worry is the gun-free zones. I think the gun-free zones are magnets for people who want to be martyrs. I cannot imagine why on earth there were Marines who were unarmed. Please explain that to me.
Well, I mean, how do you explain it? I mean, it defies common sense. Anyone that you talk to that's in favor of gun control and having more intense regulation, our servicemen would pass that.
Yes.
So it should be a bipartisan agreement that our soldiers pass all tests so that they can be armed at places like this, especially when they're a #1 target, even beyond ISIS.
Look what happened in Canada. How could you not assume that servicemen and women aren't a target, that you know, these facilities aren't doing that very thing, drawing in people, and then, you know, when they find out, and Lord knows if that guy knew it or he just had a simple death wish, but once you find out something like that, it's much easier to target people.
Well, it's glorified take down someone that served in the military, even among ISIS folks. And so if you're going to go after someone and you want to die in a jihad so you can go to paradise and get these rewards that they always talk about, if you go after the military, there's just more glory than going after civilians, which are an easy target. And there's groups beyond ISIS that would say going after civilians isn't right, but going after someone that served in the military, well, that's a little bit more justified.
That's a double high five in heaven.
Yeah.
You know what they need to do? They need to somehow communicate in another dimension with Allah, who can say, hey, guys, knock it off. This is not what I'm talking about at all. How can we make that happen? Because it seems to be as impractical and superstitious as that sounds, and as downright crazy, that seems to be the only kind of thing that would actually work on people with such deeply rooted irrational beliefs.
And you can actually make that happen. And that's because when ISIS radicalizes people, the reason they're so attracted to it is because their success is viewed as Allah's endorsement. And I've even had this conversation with ISIS folks online where that's their main argument. But if they lose, what does that mean? It means that Allah's not endorsing them anymore. All of a sudden they have to say, what did I do that made Allah abandon me? But you have to really hit them hard to make that happen.
So you're sitting there chatting with people from ISIS. That's what you're doing on the weekend.
It was easy to do. Back before their accounts were getting shut down left and right, they love talking to people online.
Interesting. And little did they know they were talking to Clarion Project's Ryan Mauro. Ryan, thank you so much for being here.